art practice, developing post TBI to be accepted to an artist residency. To using that experience to found a community for art-based, it's an art-based nonprofit for neurodisruptive people. So I'm going to cover how, with no art training or therapeutic intervention, I work developed as a 2D practice, eventually welding instruction and just being 3D, and then shifting my work to sculpture. So real quick, I'll give you a snapshot of my life leading up to my accident, the context around my accident, my TBI, and then go through the art. So this was my life pre-TBI, doing the clever thing and things to do without the road. And this was also me 3 years before my accident in a fractal a fashion show, being a fashion. And this is my bike. I was hit here at this intersection and I did the Kiwi. And so you know the handlebars are parallel, and so this is the most work in the room. I'm not gonna read you. But so about my accident. So I was unconscious for around 15 to 20 minutes. I saw the light. I had the recollection of the accident. I had one flashback about a year after my accident, and that was, my thought was, it was like, this is not any of that. And that was my flashback. And then I visited a neurologist once and been told it the biggest I've ever been told in my life, and I've been told a lot. And so when I asked him, am I ever going to be the same again? He said yes. And then I never went to see a therapist after my diagnosis of post-concussion syndrome. I was not an artist before my accident, and for 47 years of my life, I did not identify as an artist. And then almost immediately after my accident, my connection to my creativity changed, which led me to pick up, as you will see, detritus, rusted metal from streets and beaches. I was hit, okay, and the last thing, I was hit on the left side of my body. So instantly, here is the picture from my orthopedic surgeon, little arc and a little squiggly line where she's telling me my shoulder separated, and then this is a blurred on purpose picture I took in New York of the gurney when I left. And so here we go. Here comes the art part. So this is what I started doing. I have no idea what I was doing. Watercolor, never used them, and maybe that's evident here. But this was the first start. And then I go into this arc of photo project. I started, this idea came to me. I went on to copyright it. It was called Places to Kiss You. I launched a website and I built this project for like 2 years. This is the branding and this is an activation I did. And then you can kind of start to see a shift. And this is the color experience I had it with the Albers Foundation. And then I start to lay down things. I don't know, don't ask, but this is what happened. And then I lay down more things and I start to do this in a land art practice specifically. And this is what it became. And I would ride bike out to the beach. And this practice literally saved my life. And then here you can start to see the collection of metals. That little middle piece kind of is like the first time probably took like a structural kind of form. And then more of this like laying down. I'm obsessed with just everything in 2D because I don't know how to make anything because I was never an artist. And this becomes my living room. Little chaotic. Again, you can clearly see like I had no idea I wasn't making anything, but I was like just laying it down because that's what I was doing. And then things started to take a little more shape. I made these, I started to use plaster and make these into pieces. And then this is like a year and a half into me tending this beach art practice. And so that was the impetus for me to actually go take a welding class. And you can see instantly how things went from 2D to 3D. 3D continues. And then this is the last bit of work that I did that was this 2D. And then in 2020, I applied to an artist residency at the SAG project. this COVID. I ended up there in September of 2022. And then also kind of like this divine serendipity, I had a work table delivered on the first day of lockdown. And it's the first time I had a studio space. This is how my work started to transition very differently into 3D. And then this was my studio desk at Wasaic Project. The collecting of things continues. It's still what I do today. And then this is when I kind of realized, like, oh, you will do this no matter where you are. And in the art world, I think it's called site specific. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, site specific. So I am a site specific artist. But I found all this stuff, like there's an immaculate bike trail. And all this was there, and I gathered it and brought it back. And then this is the work I created there. And so that experience, oh, here's the one slide that says it all. The watercolor to the photo project, to the land art practice, to the 3D, to the, I finally say my work is sculpture. And I also accept that I made site specific work. It was a journey. And through all that, I realized that there's this opportunity or space for people who connect to their art through a brain injury or a stroke or something. And so I founded this nonprofit. It is called the Neuro Community Artist Residency and Mentorship. And we offer these 3 programs. And our mission is we support the flourishing of neurodisrupted individuals by providing services that connect them to community, art, and nature, with an emphasis on integrating these aspects into their lives, which propelled me to go back to school. I took a short course at MIT with Dr. Tara Swart, a neuroscience for business, and then I pursued my non-clinical psych master's, and I am currently in that same program as a PhD student. Take it easy on me, scientists. I'm on the other side of this. And so this is all of this kind of led to, this is my title of my research paper for research methods, the phenomenology of eco art for neurodisrupted individuals in artist residency. It has the practice of eco integration. Don't ask me anything else about that other than just sort of part of there. It's a process, as we all know. And that is it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. And we do have time for Q&A. So we do. All right. Do we have any questions?
We spoke earlier, and one of the things I'm fascinated by is your embodied response to the very things that you were doing. You didn't speak much about how you were relating your traumatic brain injury to the kind of work you were making. You were treating it more as something you had no metacognition around, something that you were saying, well, I'm just the vehicle, let the spirit move through me. And whatever I find, I find. That serendipitous response to materiality is very common amongst artists of every sort. So I wonder if you could just comment on how you feel your artistic practice has informed you about the artistic processes, thinking processes, as you move through each episode and stage of production and each material type.
Okay, TBI, I like that.
Okay, too big a question. Just how do you feel about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, moving from the world I was in to the art world, I mean, I had no idea. I'm like, what, people write a bio? Like, what is all, like, you have to write this stuff for these to even get into a show. And I'm like, what do I even say? I'm like, I don't know, it's hitting the head. Like, dot, dot, dot. I don't know, and that was my experience actually at the residency. And I was like, this is weird. Like, I'm not in that world. And I'm also not, I'm kind of in that world, but it was weird. I'm like, I'm not in the art world for a transaction. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm like, who's buying this? no one, you know, but at the beach, like nothing, you know, it's just a weird, I say it was innate in me instantly. Like, I mean, I don't know why I started picking up anything. I grew up on a farm. So so just contextually, like one of my first memories is digging in dirt in between my house and like a factory. And I was digging. So it's always dirty. My great grandfather was a woodworker. And like slowly I started to kind of connect, like, oh, like, because I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I had no idea. As long as it's actually leaving, I'm picking up garbage. So it was innate and it was like completely foreign all at once. It still is a journey.
Yeah, we'll take one more question.
Hey, I also have a brain injury and became more creative in my work, so I can relate to what you're saying. I'm curious if you felt better when you were doing this. Like, how did working creatively change your experience of your injury or disability?
Yeah, I mean, because you know, I'm a big miss in the whole healthcare thing. Like, don't ask me how I didn't go to that. I mean, I just didn't, and it was really hard. I mean, I was like suicidal ideation, all that stuff. So when I say like that Landar practice saved my life, I literally mean it. Like the biking, it was the only thing I could do. Really how I felt.
Sense of agency and a positive
Yeah, I use
obsession.
that word actually in my paper.
Read the paper.
That
I
I'm
got
not,
it.
that I'm not sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Jonathan Reiner, who will be talking about In and Between Exploring Creativity's Neural Landscape.
Opened up the well, so this is my brain, small version of it, 3D printed from my own MRI and gilded with metal leaves. And I think it represents kind of my interest with the human brain and my ongoing dialogue between science and art. And it's also the beginning of a creative journey I'd like to share with you today, one with which culminated in a solo exhibition. All original art in these slides are part of that exhibition, In and Between. My name is Jonathan Reiner. I'm a neurologist, hopefully a nice neurologist that doesn't lie to patients, but I'm a movement disorder specialist. I'm head of neuromodulation and deep brain service at Rabin Medical Center. And most of my clinical life basically revolves around Parkinson's disease, which is a neurodegenerative disorder caused by loss of dopamine within the brain, which is manifested not only by motor symptoms such as slowness of movement, rigidity, and tremor, but also by disorders of cognition, of mood, of sleep, of pain. My clinical practice basically revolves me meeting patients, examining them, listening to their concerns, and reading brain's activity through implanted sensors we have within the brain in order to provide, the best possible solution and help them with their symptoms and with their daily life. But even before medicine, there was also another identity that followed me throughout my life, and that is that of art. I grew up in a creative household. My mother is a surrealist artist. And throughout my life, basically, I watched paintings emerge from canvases and spent hours in her studio drawing myself in silent contemplation beside her. So from a very young age, I understood that art is never separate from life. It's a refuge, isn't it? It's a place to lean into. It's a place basically where I can process emotion, identity. And so artistic practice never really failed to inform me about myself throughout life, and it proved to be an evolving, an ongoing constant throughout my life. So even though I moved into medicine and neurology, I never actually truly left that world behind. So over the past years, my team and I, our team basically, tried to bring those two worlds together. And our project, which was presented yesterday by Dr. Irit Shapira, brought artists, illustrators, painters for an fMRI study. And basically what we asked these artists to do is to lie in the MRI, And while inside the scanner, artists were asked to either, they were shown visual references and asked to either copy them as accurately as possible or to use them as a reference for original work. And while we basically recorded their brain activity and their creative process, these individuals, hopefully lying in the most constricting environment you can imagine, we hope to kind of bring out a creative kind of practice from them while we recorded their brain activity. So the project actually emerged from a broader phenomenon that kind of links into my clinical practice, which is that of a phenomenon seen in Parkinson's disease. Clinicians who treat Parkinson's patients encounter something fascinating. Under certain dopaminergic states, patients with a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease and under treatment usually suddenly develop a creative urge. People who have never drawn before, never written poems, suddenly start creating for the first time in their life. And this raises extraordinary questions, doesn't it, about the role of dopamine in creativity, the biochemical components of creativity, and also whether we can harness creativity in order to basically alleviate symptoms and change prognosis in neurodegenerative disorders. Now, in neuroscience, basically, we're trained to deconstruct cognition into measurable components, aren't we? Science, by its nature, attempts to reduce phenomena into empirical truths. We isolate variables. Creativity, for instance, is divided into cognitive constructs: divergent thinking, remote association, ideation, fluency, imagination. And these frameworks are important because they allow us basically to investigate the brain methodically. But creativity resists simplification, doesn't it? And I think I can dare to say this in this kind of crowd aloud, is that the more we try to define creativity scientifically, the more it seems to evade and kind of disappear and escape definition. The more it feels like stripping down a magic trick, doesn't it? It feels like it loses its alchemy, its essence. And so like Plato's cave, perhaps basically we're only observing shadows of something much larger than we're able to encompass in the methods that we're using. And so as our research evolved and we identified dynamic connections between different brain structures and brain networks, a new relationship emerged for me within this project. I was once asked whether creativity is contagious, which in all honesty, I think is a daring question. Because as we continue to explore creativity, not only through our kind of brain data and scans, but also through my encounters with artists, with their creative practice, their studios, their superstitions, their rituals, their quirks, the more I felt the urge myself to create. I wanted to immerse myself into an experiential research free of scientific boundaries, one which explores the constructs of creativity through the process of creation itself. To submerge myself into this liminal place between control and surrender, between intention and accident, between conscious thought and intuition. So I began making art I would have never produced in mediums I never explored. And this process basically freed me to basically explore new connections. So paradoxes, opposing ideas, forces somehow joined harmoniously. And as such, it allowed the liberty basically to portray the creative process rather than the product, and to present the unpolished and often enigmatic ways in which we emerge into art. And so it's precisely within this tension between scientific observation and subjective experience that the exhibition In Between was born. As viewers move through the exhibition, works portraying brain scans, questionnaires, our process of experimentation basically shift gradually away from the empirical and quantifiable into something increasingly ambiguous, associative, transcendent, mirroring my own journey through the project. My screen prints were torn into a documented path of practice, a yellow brick road, a topography of creative landscape. My canvases were rolled and arranged as a bonfire of muses, of inspirations, of memories. In another work, I collected and dried flowers and arranged them mounted them on glass into compositions that I mounted onto a repurposed hospital utility cart, such that they formed the layered sections kind of a brain. And this remote association basically allowed the creation of this work, which speaks not only about the fragility and evolving kind of wonder of the human mind, but also about the role of creativity and aesthetics and how they may impact on our health. In this work, I built a water fountain over a white surface covered in hydrochromic ink, which is opaque when dry, and when basically the water splatters on it, on the surface, the fountain basically exposes an artwork in a random way as the surface gets wet. So throughout this process, while we were doing our experiment, but also while I was kind of immersing myself into this artistic practice, I think I finally embodied something that I think makes creativity so profoundly human. Because creativity does something extraordinary, doesn't it? It produces transformation, as we've discussed here. Before a painting reaches a gallery wall, before a poem reaches a page, before music reaches an audience, something changes internally for the creator. Creativity basically organizes internal experience, it creates meaning, it reinforces identity. And it activates vast neural systems of memory, of emotion, of imagination, of embodiment. And then somehow this deeply internal process transcends outwards, doesn't it? The baby is born. A painting can move someone centuries after its creator is gone. An idea can alter history. A melody can generate collective memory. I find that mind-blowing. Creativity basically allows us to transform internally and transfer those inner worlds outwards, which in turn transforms others. And perhaps this is why it remains kind of one of the defining traits of our species. Not simply because it produces innovation, but because it produces connection. Connections between divergent and seemingly opposing brain networks, as we've heard here in our research and other research, but also between people, between eras, between inner and outer worlds, and in my case, between kind of disciplines, between neuroscience, medicine, and art. My artistic practice is defined, basically, has defined me as a scientist, and my scientific gaze has defined me as an artist, and I think creativity in general is defining me as a doctor. And my hope is that we continue to illuminate the path of creativity in that way. Thank you very much.